Welcome to another episode of the Boss Experience podcast. My name is Michele Davis, and I'm your host. And in today's episode, I have a special guest with me, Miss Tanya Tyler. And Tanya, interestingly enough, I'll get into her background in a moment, but she has an interesting story to share. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking about tapping into your purpose and really developing those habits for business success. And so when you think about success, everyone should have their own definition. But what often happens is people are seeking out externally for who they should be and what their definition of success should be. And really those things start with what is it that you want? What are you envisioning for your life? What is it that you desire? What is your vision? And so often, when we leave our careers, we really don't have an answer for what our vision is. We are kind of trying to figure ourselves out. And it's really crazy, especially if you're 35, 40, 45, and even 50 and older, and you start to reflect a little bit on, just your career, who you are, and you really don't know who you are for, most of us don't. And it becomes a journey for us to kind of, get on a path and that helps us rediscover who we are. And then when you add in, life changes like a divorce or, a sudden career change that you didn't anticipate, things get even more complicated. So I'm happy to have Tanya here to talk about, tapping into your purpose. What does that mean? How do you define, success? What are some things you should start to think about when you're creating your own definition and creating some habits so you can ensure that you are successful on your journey, on your entrepreneurship journey. So thanks for being here, Tanya.
Thank you, Michele, for this opportunity. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you.
Awesome. So, you have a bit of an interesting background because you made a huge career change. And by the way, Tanya is a podcaster. She hosts a meetup group for entrepreneurs, which she'll share about a little later in this episode. So, but she made quite the career shift, and I'm going to let Tanya kind of chime in and tell us about that.
Well, thank you again, Michele. It's an honor to be here. The boss experience is something that's exciting to learn, and like I said, it's how you pivot and change. So again, thank you so much for this opportunity. And she was a guest on my show, so I had to plug that in. So
thank you.
So yes, you have to check out Coffee with Tea on Confident Strides because Michele dropped some golden nuggets, but without going too much into that. Yeah, it was a big shift from Michele mentioned that I was military. So I always laugh because I did 20 years. I did 20 years in 1 week. And so that gave me 20 years for full retirement. So I have a pension that comes in. So that allows me to play a little bit, discover a little bit about who I am. But before I got into that, I retired from the military and I got hired into the GS position. So if anybody knows about that, you go from the military to the GS, you go right from working government to straight government. So basically I was what they call a double dipper at that time because I was receiving my military pension plus I was getting my government contract and pay. And I did that for about a year. And anybody who knows about the GS position, it's kind of hard to get into, it's like,
oh yeah,
once you get in, you try to stay in. And I did 1 year and I resigned my position. And people lost their mind, like, why did you resign? And I'm like, I'm not doing another 20 years of doing what I just did. And I left the GS position and I worked for what they call private sector for a period of time. And I say a brief period of time. I did 6 months. I couldn't do it and I quit. So
now what was it, because you came from this very regimented, military background. So what was it about now it was time to work and, 9 to 5s were very regimented. or for the most part, they are. What was it about that shift that threw you off balance and you're like, I can't do this?
Really what threw me off was the mindset. To be
Mm.
honest, Michele, it was the mindset. It was military mindset was more mission driven. We know what our goals is. We know what our purpose is. We know what we're after. And it's easy to get into the mission. You know, they tell you this is the mission, you just do it. When I got into the private sector world, it was the bottom line. It was the money was the driving force. And to me, I couldn't get into that mindset. It was just a whole different kind of shift of thinking that I just could not grasp. And I remember because I was in a food plant, and the QA or the USDA inspector would come in and were like, "Don't be cohorting with the enemy." And I'm thinking, aren't we all on the same mission of getting safe food out there? But and then well, he said that was the thing. It's like you're talking with the enemy, and I was like, I never thought the USDA would be the enemy. So, like I said, it was just a mindset change that I wasn't used to. So I did 6 months. 6 months was too much for me, and I just like I quit, and I went into doing direct marketing, direct sale marketing for a period of time, and that didn't go well either. So, but yeah, my journey trying to figure out who I was after the military was hard because, like you said, the military was rarely stringent. They will say, if we want you to think, we'd issue a brain. So it's like, do the job, get it done, then ask why. You don't ask why during, so that was the mindset of what I came through. And when I left and I didn't have that direct status of what I'm supposed to do, I was lost. As they say, I was lost in the sauce. I was like, I can't figure this out. There's just too much chaos, and I can't figure it out. So when I went into the doing the direct sale marketing, I did that for a number of years. I wasn't good at it, but I stayed with it because it helped me see a different kind of mindset, a different kind of way to run your business. It was more women oriented company, so that was a different. And so the first conference I went to, they had the music pumping up loud and people were dancing. I'm looking like, what?
People can do this.
We can do this.
Make money.
Right? You can have fun. So it was a hard shift, but it was a shift that I needed. I always say it was like a decompressing type phrase that I just had to figure out, there's other ways that you can do business out there. And it's okay. It's okay. We can figure this out. So that's where I was on my journey. And that's just a tip of like where I am until I got into really started understanding a mindset, a habit, a routine. So I established more of a routine for self-care rather than a daily job.
So when you left the direct marketing position, or let's take it back, let's dial it back a little bit further. What kind of baggage did you have to shed in your transition from, your military, which was your military career, to get to the point where you wanted to reflect and you wanted to align with your purpose?
Oh, Michele, that's a loaded question because I had a lot of baggage to unpack. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't just the military stuff. It was like the way I was raised, the kind of mindset that we were supposed to have. You're supposed to get a job. That's the kind of mindset that I had to do. So I was always looking for a job. And when I shifted into doing the direct sale marketing, that was a whole entrepreneur mindset, right? Now I could be my own boss. And I was like, how does that look like? What does that look like? And so I had to shed some of the old mentality, the old shift in thinking that I had. Like for one, entrepreneurs look for opportunities, right? Mm-hmm. I was always looking for a job. So that's why I went into the GS position, because I was looking for a guaranteed job. And the best way I can say it is like this. I studied, they talk about the giving props out to Bishop T.D. Jakes. He did a sermon on the lame lion right? And it's like the lion is in the cage. We entertain the cage. I'm the lion, I'm in the cage. Or I can always look at my dogs. My dogs is another great example. So, you have the fenced in yard. It's great. They know where they're getting their meals from. So that's, the concept. I was getting my meals. I know where it was coming from. But then the cage blew open. So then you have like, oh my God, I can leave. But if I leave, what's going to happen? Because I don't know anything outside that cage. I only know what happens in the cage. I only know what happens in my yard. I don't know what happens outside the fence. And so unpacking the baggage was me leaving the yard or leaving the cage, because now I had to figure out how to hunt for my own food. I have to hunt for this, even though, yeah, I get a pension. I still get a little bit of nuggets thrown to me, but it was like, if if the government shuts down tomorrow and I don't have a pension, what am I going to do? And that was the mindset of what happens when I stepped out the cage. I have to start figuring out how to hunt again. I have to figure out how to get back into the wild and look for opportunities. And that was the mindset shift of letting go of that old thinking of the military. It was like letting go of that employee mindset to be able to look for opportunities to grow.
Yeah, and I think I know a lot of people get stuck. They get stuck, they're afraid. And I always say, your 9 to 5 should never be your only bread and butter. You don't want one entity or one source to be the only thing you have to go to feed your family, to survive, to keep a roof over your head. And you, at any moment, you can lose that job, or things can shift or change for you. So I think that, when we think about the lion in the cage, even we're like psychologically conditioned to stay in that cage, even if the door is open. Some people can't see an opportunity, and I was the same way. If it's right in front of your face, you can't see it, because you want to think about the 20,000 reasons why that opportunity isn't right for you, or how that sounds crazy. Because I know you probably had people tell you were crazy for leaving that good government federal job, and and everything that glitters isn't gold. And while things may be secure, you have to say, am I happy? Am I happy? And so at what point what was your journey like to kind of define whether, what that you were supposed to be happy? Because we're conditioned, like you said, a lot of childhood, from our childhood, it's ingrained, you get a job, you go to college. Okay, if you don't go to college, there's no such thing as self-care. Yeah, you're not supposed to be taking a break. You're not supposed to breathe. You're supposed to be working, right? And you have people, especially in my family, who've worked 40, 50 years in the same job, and they come out, and next thing you know, 5 years, so they're dead. Because they've worked their whole life, never really tapping into, what makes them happy, and having purpose, and being able to feel fulfilled. And I don't think as a society we allow that in our, people to feel that. So what was your journey like? Because you went from military, then you tried something, you did the government job thing, and it didn't feel right in your spirit. And you probably felt like that lion still, like you needed to break free, being, after this, being in the military and having this strict environment. And then you went to direct marketing, and what was your journey? How did you end up, providing a forum for entrepreneurs to come together, and podcasting? What was your journey like? And you mentioned habits.
Yeah, we mentioned, following that path as we low. And the turning point for me was after I was in the direct sale marketing. Me and my husband were arguing over finances, because now we're down to like, I was primarily, with like I said, I was a double dipper. So I was bringing in some good cash. I ain't gonna lie, but now it was down. So my husband, it was mainly on him to bring in he was the breadwinner now. So it shifted. There were so many shifts. It was for me, he would call me a nag, when I had the money coming in to a certain extent. He felt like I was nagging him. And I, at the time, I didn't feel like I was. I probably was, but but there's certain things that, the mindset plays a lot when you're dealing with a lot of, responsibility that you think you're supposed to have. And what it was, that transition was letting that responsibility go. And the responsibility, what I'm saying is not saying you're irresponsible, but it's that responsibility that society puts on you. Like, you're supposed to do this, those supposed to's. You're supposed to do this, you're supposed to do that, you're supposed to do that. And I'm thinking, it just doesn't seem right to me. There's got to be more out here. So give a fast story. I was in the direct sale marketing, and I did that for a number of years. Again, like I said, I went with the first company, didn't do very well. Joined a second company, a little late, a few years after that. Stayed with, I'm still with the company. I still love the company, but I don't market it, right? Because it's not that I don't like direct sale marketing. I just, again, if something in my spirit just doesn't reel right, I feel like I rebel against it. It's like, you're supposed to do this. Somebody says you're supposed to, I'm like, don't think so. And this feels like, and I don't know if it's because of the military for like 20 years, you're supposed to. And I'm like, no. And I feel that freedom. Like, it's like that, like, now I'm like that lion on the outside. You're trying to get me back in the cage. I'm like, oh no, it just don't work that way no more. Right. So getting back to the habits though, I disconnected so much from my military, status, or what do you call it, strategic mindset, but it plays a role now where I am in my life, right? So I didn't completely lose all of that habit and that stringent type mindset. I just now learned how to power it better for myself where I am in my entrepreneur journey, right? So for like the longest time, you're like, again, like a teenager, I rebel again. No, I'm not going to do that. No, I'm not going to do that. And that's what it was for a number of years. But now I'm in there, I was like, oh, wait a minute. I have these powers and I can use them more wisely. So it's not like I don't have the habits and the mindset to do it. I just don't have to go to the extremes of where I was to where I am now. And that's basically all the stuff I had to unpack along the way. Because anybody says I had to, now I'm like, I don't believe that. I think there's another way. And people look at me like, what? And I'm thinking, and I had to unpack. I retired in 2010, and I started my podcast in 2020. So that's 10 years. I had to unpack a lot of stuff, to be able to now, like I said, determine my own schedules. Tell people, no, I don't want to do that if I don't want to. Or, if, like said, we're doing the podcast. And so podcasting, you have to have a schedule. You have to have some kind of schedule. So I didn't completely tap all of it out. I just now learned to use those powers in a more constructive way, if that makes sense.
I think that's a perfect example of soft skills that people tend to ignore that they have. You have all these superpowers within you. You just don't know how to tap into them and leverage them for your own business ventures. And I think that's a perfect example of how you while you were no longer in the 9-to-5, so to speak, you for the military, you still have these skills, and we need to stop ignoring the skills that we have that served a purpose when we were employed. Those skills were good enough then, and they should be good enough for you to now venture into your own business efforts. Okay, so with so 10 years to go from, to shift your mindset. And I think the luxury that you had is that you had an income coming in. And so you may have some people listening like, I don't have 10 years. I can't be sitting around 10 years.
Here's what I want to say for those who don't say they don't have 10 years. 10 years is 10 years anyway. So what you're doing with those 10 years matters. So even if you still have your 9-to-5 job, you can still be working on your mindset and doing that shift, because 10 years is 10 years.
Right. And start thinking outside that cage and outside of that box. Yeah, that people are stuck in. They're afraid to leave the cage, even if the cage door is open. even if the cage door is open. So what are 3 key things if you had to tell someone they needed like their starting point to really kind of tapping into their passion? What were 3 key things that you had to work on during that 10-year period?
I would definitely say what really helps me is I do a daily journal, and I have there's 5, actually there's 5 key elements that I write in my journal every day, but I'm to keep it with the 3. The first thing I always was like listen more, judge less, right? So what it is I listen to a lot more things. And it's not just other people, but it's to myself. Like listen, get still, get quiet. So I one of my daily routines is I go for a walk, and that's when I get quiet and get still and get to listen to what my inner voice is telling me. Because so often when I was in the military, I could take orders from everybody else, but I didn't trust that inner guiding system to tell me this is the way for me. So that transition when I left that corporate job, when I left between the GS position, it was a voice was telling me, this is not you, Tanya. This is not you. You're not going to do another 20 years. You're not doing this. And I was like, but this is what I need to do. This is my responsibility. So I've had like that inner battle, that inner voice battle between itself. So when I say now, listen more and judge less, listen to what people have to say, because they might give you that golden nugget, that might give you that insight you've been looking for. And don't be so quick to judge it. Let it put it in that noodle and let it marinate a little bit and see what comes out of it. So yeah, I would say listen more, judge less. 2, I would always say is spend less, save more. And it's not necessarily about money. It's about, spending more time with family, with those who matter, and do a little less time of trying to hold on to things that don't, so use your time wisely, save more time with those that matter, and let go of the stuff that doesn't, let that go. And then the last tip I always say is trust the process. You got to, I didn't know all that stuff I was going through those 10 years was going to help me be able to create a podcast. That was the least of my thoughts, but I trusted the process. It followed and let it go. Like I said, 10 years is 10 years. So 10 years, you can still do the same job and still be in the same place, or you can do 10 years and unwind and unpack and see where your inner guidance is going to let you go. So let the process naturally flow.
And a key thing is, because I always say that, we are like walking around with so much anxiety and so much stress, and we're part of the problem because we wake up, think about and I want the audience to really think about what do you do when you first open your eyes? What do you do? What's your routine? And most of us will say, well, I get up, I pick up my phone, I do all of these things. And actually we're waking up and we're feeding our mindset with so much, craziness, negativity, because we're not allowing, and we're not clearing our minds. No one, people aren't journaling enough. They aren't allowing themselves to get quiet, their minds to get quiet. And I was the same way, I made so many excuses. If you would have told me to take a walk, I would be like, I don't have time to take no walk. Like I gotta go to work. The other thing, I would work, like when I was in my 9-to-5 career, I would work through my lunch. And I did it every day. I would eat at my desk. And that was the most unhealthy thing, among other things that was, going on at that time. That was very unhealthy because I never allowed myself to take a break. I needed to work. I needed to be here. And because the world was going to end, I guess if I didn't if I didn't like sit there and take care of this, and and that goes into also being so overworked that we feel like we need to make those kind of decisions. And so when you're overworked, you're not allowing yourself to develop, emotionally, and you're not developing your mindset, and you're like waking up looking at your phone, seeing whose drama is going on, or you're listening to the news and all of the craziness. I live in New York, so every day is like something different happening. And then we're getting in our car, we're, going to work. It's like, when did you take a moment to really clear your mind and to really, and then if you're building a business or attempting to build a business, you can't, because you got too much going on and it's not the right stuff. It's
Right,
not the
right.
right stuff. So that's an excellent point you make about, making sure that you have that morning routine and you take time for those things. Now, is there anything when you reflect back that you would have wished you would have done sooner in that 10-year period?
Ah, and no. I was trying to think no, because what I'm finding is, and like I said, it takes me back to my walks. I watch nature. I watch nature, and if you think about all of our greatest um uh achievements, we take it from nature. I mean, we learn how to fly from birds. We learn how to, we got these sailing things because we watched the fish. So nature is one of my greatest teachers, if you say, right. So I sit there and I think about it, like, and plus all the other reading. But if you think about it, it's like when you're planting your seeds, we plant a seed, we put it in the ground, and we get all the nutrients. It finds the sunlight, but it takes its time. It blooms when it needs to, right? So I could sit there and feel anxious, like, oh, I wish I had this. But if I wish it too fast and I don't have all the proper base, all the nutrients, all the stuff that I need for that seed to actually take bloom and grow, it will die before it's really supposed to take root. So I was thinking, now when I think back, everything, again, what I talk about, let the process flow naturally. There's things we can do in the process, while we're in between. Like, I can read, I can learn, I can do more study. There's things I need to probably pick up along that journey. But if I'm rushing the journey, I'm not taking that time for the seed to actually take root. You know what I'm saying? So I'm trying to rush the process that maybe it just needs the time. So I'm like, everything needed to happen when it happened. I needed to pick
Mhm.
up the lessons along the way when I needed those. You know what I'm trying to say? I don't know. It happened in its right time.
Yeah, there's a few key things that I want people to pick up on. You were intentional, so I don't want people to think, oh, just sit down and everything's going to flow and happen naturally. But you were intentional about your journey, and you have to be intentional when it comes down to building a business. And I like what you said about nature, because one of the things that people may not realize is that nature, you can ground yourself within nature, and we don't ground ourselves. And that term grounding comes from, if you are a trauma survivor, or, you've had anxiety issues, get in nature, and get grounded. And we used to, my previous life, I ran a domestic violence shelter. And that was the first time I had heard of that concept, because we were working with people that were had experienced trauma. And so so also, as a staff, we're it's something called secondary trauma that you can get from the people that you work with. And so that's why I said, when we're absorbing a lot of stuff, we have to have a release. And just even in our day to day, you don't have to work with trauma survivors to be traumatized by what we're taking into our minds. But the concept of grounding helps clear your mind, and it helps stabilize your mood. And so I'm glad that you pointed that out. Now let's talk about the meetup that you have. So let's talk about who it's for. If someone wants to learn more about it, how they would find it.
Okay. Yeah, what it is I've been a Meetup Pro for a number of years. I attended and that's meetup.com for anybody who's like, oh, I've heard Meetup. So Meetup usually it started years ago. So it's not a new concept. It's over 20 years ago. And when they first started, it was all about in-person meetups. So if you had a group and you wanted to go hike with nature, you could form a group and you go hike together in nature. And I was a meetup pro, and I was frustrated because as an organizer, a lot of the people don't meet out in public anymore. Like we've all gotten sort of like used to our little cocoons. And when COVID hit, that just shut it all down, right? So trying to get people to come to the groups was kind of hard. So what happened was Meetup had to shift too. So now they allow people to have virtual meetings. So that expanded my concept of my Meetup Pro network. And what that is it's named, my Meetup Pro is actually called Confident Strides. That's the basis of all three groups. But I have a group that's geared towards entrepreneurs. So if you want to get in there and connect and network with other entrepreneurs, you can do that. I have another group that's Confident Strides, personal development. So we get in there and for both men and women, we get in there, we talk about personal development, challenge your thoughts, think about your thinking. And then the last group that I also is other Confident Strides, Women's Empowerment Group. And that's mainly towards women. And we talk about issues that women are struggling with, could be imposter syndrome or, vulnerability. So what happened was we built this network of meetup groups, all virtual, and people can come on meetup.com, type in confident strides dot whatever, entrepreneurs, personal development, women's entrepreneur, and you'll see us with the groups. And you can come in there. We usually have like an hour session, all virtual. Come in there, chit chat, share your journey, share your story. And that's what we've been doing for the last 3 years. And I have now other people who come and join me. So it's like, the best way I can say it, Michele, is like, I'm the cable network owner. And then I have people who do television shows. So I have women who do specifically vulnerability. I have a woman who does specifically her why. I have a gentleman who does specifically networking. I have another one who teaches you how to do your social media. But we build a network out of those three meetup.com networks.
And so if someone's thinking like, what has been, or let me rephrase it, what has been the greatest benefit you've seen those that come to your groups experience? Like, what are they getting from it? They're meeting new people. They're being able to meet like-minded people. That's important. When you're starting a business, is to be around people that think like you. So what are some other benefits?
I would say, I'll share the story that from a young woman. Now, of course, I'm not going to share her name, but she popped in our on the Vulnerable You. It's Vulnerable You, if you want. It's 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it's hosted by Reshma Bourjwani. And Reshma's always considered vulnerability as her superpower, right? So what she'll do is she'll host a call. So I hop on sometimes. I'll just be a guest to hop on, And one of the ladies, there are a lot of women who hop on and they're going through so many different things. Some of them are transitioning from their job. Some of them are transitioning from a divorce. Some of them are, just kind of lost in their personal development story. And what they're doing is they're trying to find another group outside their friends or their families that they can talk to. And so we offer a safe space for people to hop on the call. So this young lady, she comes on the call and she was like, I have this negative thinking about myself. I have low self-esteem. And another lady who had just joined us, she's only been on like 2 calls before. She's like, I know where she was. I know where she is in our journey and I want to help her. So it's not like I have to do it. I have a community of people, we like-minded people who come together and we all share our journeys. So like if you say, oh, I've never been in a place, I'm trying to find a new way about my journey. And all my friends don't understand. We're that safe space that you can come in there and connect with the other community. And we're all over. Like we have one woman that calls in from Germany, so we're all over and we come together because we're all there to support and uplift, especially in the women's empowerment, to uplift everybody wherever their journey is, because everybody's going to be in their own journey where they are, but there's going to be other people along the journey who can either help you or, start you where your journey is. And we just share insight. We're not therapists. We're not there to solve, but we're here to listen. And I think that's the biggest key point in this world, that I don't think a lot of people are listening.
Right. And I think this is just so much different than a Facebook group where you put a post in and hope that somebody responds, and sometimes you get a response and sometimes you don't, because this is all live. You have real people connecting and communicating with one another. And I think we forget that can still happen and exist. Just because we have social media and the internet doesn't mean we can't still talk to human beings in real time. So I think that's a plus. Now, your podcast, where can people listen to your podcast? And then can you tell people where they can find you in general? And so speak it out, because you're going to have an audio and a video version of this episode.
Well, yes, Miss Michele. I am. You can find me on YouTube. I have 2 channels technically. Yes. The best way to find me is under Confident Strides. That's CONFIDENT Strides, STRIDES. And but that'll lead you to my Coffee with Tea, which is fairly new, so that's kind of hard to find. So find me under Confident Strides. I am also on Anchor, which means I'm on Google, Apple, and Spotify. And then our latest, we upgraded now, is we're on iHeartRadio under Confident Strides on, I'm sorry, Coffee with Tea. That's T, just the letter T, on Confident Strides. So basically, use the hashtag Confident Strides. You're going to find us everywhere, because I hashtag everything Confident Strides.
Awesome. So what are some final words and takeaways that you want the audience to have as we close out this episode?
Oh, what's coming up to my mind right now is you are stronger than you really think you are. Oh my God, you just don't really know how much you can grow if you learn to start listening to that internal GPS, because it's going to lead you to great things. It led me to a podcast I never would have thought, because I resisted, like, no. But so I was like, if I listened to my own self, we wouldn't be doing this. But I listened to what my inner guidance was telling me to do, and I decided to listen to my assignment. And this is how the podcast came about. That's how the whole thing got started, and that's what 2.5 years, and it's led me to grow our Facebook groups. And so, like I said, just listen to that internal GPS. Turn off the silence of other people. Pay attention to what you're paying attention to, because some of that stuff we're taking in is programming, but it's not the right programming for you.
Yeah, and it's not programming you for success. Yeah, so you went from being in the military to technically being an influencer, because you have access to networks of people. And so if people are like wanting to see if they can get a part of that network or get in front of one of your networks, they can reach out to you as well.
Yes, Confident Strides. I'll spell it again. CONFIDENT Strides, STRIDES. And I do a lot of my, I'm on Instagram, Confident Strides. I'm on Facebook, Confident Strides. I have a website, confidentstrides.com. So you can find me all under Confident Strides. And here's the thing, Miss Michele, the name came years ago when I was on a walk, right?
Wow.
Years ago.
Clearing your mind.
In my mind. And I was thinking to myself, if I was ever going to have a business years ago, what would it be called? And Confident Strides was the name. And I just never figured out how to put it all together until a couple of years ago.
And here you are now. So I just want to thank you, Tanya. It's been such a pleasure hanging out with you. And thank you for all the little gems you dropped today. Make sure you connect with Tanya online somewhere on social media, YouTube, through her podcast, through her meetup networks, Confident Strides. And with that being said, thank you, Tanya. And, that's a wrap for this episode. So thanks for tuning in. And I can't wait for you to tune in to a future episode of the Boss Experience Podcast. Bye.
Thank you, Michele.